Life, the very word seems to shimmer with energy, mystery, and a touch of the divine. It's what separates the animate from the inanimate, the vibrant from the static. Or does it? What if the line between life and death, between being and non-being, is thinner than we imagine? What if the grand symphony of existence is more a matter of perspective and a fundamental truth of the universe? Erwin Schrödinger, a physicist whose name has become synonymous with deep existential puzzles, once defined life in a way that captures its delicate, almost paradoxical essence. Living things avoid decay into disorder and equilibrium, a poetic way to say, perhaps, that life is a defiant dance against the inevitable pull of entropy, the universe's relentless drive toward chaos and sameness. But what does this really mean? Picture, for a moment, your download folder. Yes, the one on your computer. It begins its life in perfect order. Empty, pristine, a blank slate awaiting purpose. Over time, though, it becomes a chaotic mess of files, photos you downloaded but forgot to delete, random PDFs, memes you saved but never shared. Unless you take the time to clean it up, to inject energy, and impose order, it will spiral into utter disarray. In many ways, this is life, not the downloads themselves, of course, but the act of resisting chaos, of pulling against the tide. This analogy, though whimsical, hints at a profound truth. Life isn't a thing but a process, a series of actions that stave off the inevitable dissolution into disorder. But what then is life, if it's not a thing? If it's not reducible to a set of parts? What makes something truly alive? Every living creature on this spinning blue planet is made up of cells. Cells, those microscopic miracles, are like tiny robots, protein-based machines that hum with activity, yet are far too small to feel or experience anything. Imagine them as tiny factories or intricate Lego sets, each piece snapping into place to build something greater than the sum of its parts. These cells possess what we often think of as the hallmarks of life, a boundary that separates them from their surroundings, the ability to regulate themselves, the power to consume energy, the drive to grow, respond, and evolve, and, of course, the grand finale, they reproduce. Yet here's the kicker. No individual part of a cell is alive, not the proteins, not the lipids, not the swirling molecules of DNA. Each component is, by itself, lifeless matter, following the blind laws of physics and chemistry. Inside every cell, millions of chemical reactions occur every second. Millions. It's a complex, breathtaking symphony of interactions, each reaction sparking the next, like dominoes falling in perfect synchrony. Now imagine a car speeding down a highway at 100 kilometers per hour. Not remarkable, right? But now picture the car rebuilding every single one of its parts: tires, engine, windshield, as it barrels down the road, using only the materials it scavenges along the way. That, in essence, is what a cell does, constantly rebuilding, constantly renewing, all while functioning as a coherent unit. And yet, despite all this activity, all this complexity, the cell is not alive in the way we imagine life to be. It's simply matter, obeying the immutable laws of the universe. So where does this leave us? Is life just the sum of all these processes, a grand illusion created by the interplay of lifeless parts? Or is there something more, something intangible that we've yet to grasp? Here's where things get really interesting. Every living thing is, ultimately, in a race against time. The intricate dance of chemical reactions within a cell can only keep going for so long. Eventually, the music stops. The cell dies, the organism perishes, but life as a concept doesn't end there. Why? Because life has a backup plan. It's called DNA. DNA is life's blueprint. Its recipe for creating more of itself. You could think of every living thing as a sophisticated delivery system for this genetic material. DNA is what endures, what carries the instructions for building new entities, new vessels for life. Evolution ensures that only the most successful blueprints, those best suited to their environment, persist. The rest are left behind, relics of an unkind past. But if life is just DNA perpetuating itself, does that mean DNA is life? Let's strip DNA down to its essence. A complex molecule, beautiful in its intricacy, but inert on its own. It cannot act, think, or move without the machinery of a cell. Enter viruses, the ultimate curveball in the definition of life. These rogue agents are essentially strands of DNA or RNA wrapped in a protective shell. They can't do much on their own, but once inside a host cell, they come alive, or at least they act alive. They hijack the cell's machinery, turning it into a factory for making more viruses. Are they alive then, or are they simply very clever molecular parasites? Viruses don't seem to care about our philosophical dilemmas. They exist, they thrive, and they blur the lines between life and death. Some even invade dead cells and reanimate them to serve their purposes. How's that for unsettling? Speaking of unsettling, let's talk about mitochondria, the power plants of our cells. These tiny organelles were once free-living bacteria, independent entities that struck a deal with larger cells billions of years ago. They provide energy in exchange for a safe haven. Over time, they gave up their independence, becoming integral parts of our cells. They still carry their own DNA and can reproduce on their own, but they are no longer considered alive. They are, well, something else. In their sacrifice, they've shown us that even the line between living and non-living is negotiable if it benefits survival. Perhaps this is the true essence of life: information that persists, that finds ways to endure, adapt, and replicate. If so, what about artificial intelligence? By some definitions, we're on the brink of creating artificial life entities that can learn, adapt, and perhaps one day replicate themselves. Could a sufficiently advanced AI be considered alive? If so, what does that say about us, about our place in the universe? And then there's the ultimate question. If everything in the universe is made of the same stuff, atoms, 10 molecules obeying the same physical laws, does that mean or does it mean everything is dead? Is life merely a question of complexity, a threshold beyond which matter begins to behave in ways we associate with being alive? Here's a thought experiment. If we were never truly alive in the first place, can we ever truly die? Maybe life and death are just illusions, constructs we use to make sense of a universe that defies simple categorization. Perhaps we are not so separate from the stars and the rocks and the oceans as we like to think. Maybe in some profound way we are the universe and the universe is us. This idea can be both comforting and disorienting. If life is not a thing but a process, if death is not an end but a transformation, then what does it mean to be human, to be alive, to matter? We don't have answers for you, only questions, but perhaps that's the point. After all, It's the act of asking these questions, of pondering our place in the cosmos, that makes us feel most alive, and in that feeling, fleeting and fragile as it may be, there is meaning. So what do you think? Is life a thing, a process, a story we tell ourselves, or is it something deeper, something beyond our grasp? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain: as long as we keep asking, we'll keep living.